What's up, football heads? Welcome back to that show. I'm your host, as always, Kyle McQueen. I'm still in parts unknown for the foreseeable future. We'll see what happens when I get back into the lab. We got a good show. I think it's a good show. I may have misspoke when I talked on the pick show last week, saying it's kind of a weak slate of games, but I think we got some good ones in here. Got to lead off at the top with my Minnesota Vikings. Best team in ball. Are the Minnesota Vikings the best team in football right now? At the very least, for about a 28-hour period, they were, until the Bills did what they did to Jacksonville in prime time on Monday Night Football in Jacksonville. We'll get to them. We might have a special episode later this week. I might sit down with the Buffalorian. We're going to try and get my boy Adam Dobrovolsky, the Dauber, play-by-play guy, football savant, to mediate a discussion, friendly debate between myself and Tanner Moody, the Buffalorian. Who's better, Vikings or Bills? But for right now, I want to talk about my Minnesota Vikings, baby.
Let me talk to you.
You got to love. I don't even care if you're a Vikings fan. You could be a Packers fan, Bears fan, Lions fan. You could hate the Vikings with every fiber of your being. But I'm telling you right now, you got to love it. I tried to tell them last week. What did I say? I said, nobody wants to play the Minnesota Vikings. And what else did I say? I said, we got some bad boys on that defensive side of the ball, baby. We got some bad boys on that defensive side of the ball. What they did to the Texans just bodied them. Just bodied them, man. And the Texans, that's a good football team. C.J. Stroud, would he have 6 interceptions as a rookie? Had 2 in this game. You add Stephon Diggs to Nico Collins to Tank Dell coming back healthy. Dalton Schultz. You got some pieces on the defense with a head coach that you know knows how to call a championship caliber defense. And they looked lost. C.J. Stroud looked like it was his first game as a pro. He looked lost. Diggs racked up, 93 yards, which, much love to Stephon Diggs, cashed a bunch of bets on that Stephon Diggs receiving ladder that I did mention. I mentioned on Instagram. If you're not following the Instagram, Not Sports Betting on the Football Heads Instagram, hot new Not Sports Betting show, gave out some good tidbits. We hit pretty good. Made about 110% profits. But the Texans, Dalton Schultz, I don't even know if he played. He honestly might not play. I couldn't tell you because he didn't do anything. Nico Collins, few balls. Tank Dell, couple balls. Diggs, they were just letting him get underneath, get an 8-yard pass, get a 10-yard pass, get a 3-yard pass. Just matriculate a little bit, but I'm telling you, man, this Vikings defense, I don't remember who said it. Someone said, you got to have a PhD. It may have been Judd on Purple Daily. Check them out. Good guys. You got to have a PhD to play in this defense. And it shows, man, because last year they blitzed at a historically high rate, over 50% of plays. They sent an extra man. This year, I believe they're around like 23%, but they show it constantly. And what they're doing is they'll line up, 6 to 8 guys on the line of scrimmage, make you think they're blitzing. Then they only send 4. They send the 4 you'd expect, and they sort of flush everybody out to the sides to take away the quick throws. So you got the quarterback pre-snap thinking like, oh, they're bringing heat. I may need to get rid of this ball quickly. And he drops back. They don't bring heat, but the quarterback's still thinking, I got to get this ball out quick. But then they flood all the quick passing lanes, so he can't do that. And then the pass rush is just nasty. So by the time he's like, okay, they're not sending pressure. I got nothing quick. You're looking for the intermediate. You're looking for the deep routes. And by the time you get that far, you got 1, 2, 3 guys coming down. Jonathan Grenard, a lot was said. Oh, he didn't put up big numbers in week 1. PFF has been down on his performance. 3 sacks. I'm telling you, I've watched the tape from the Vikings this season, and Jonathan Grenard, his get off is insane. And that's what Brian Flores wanted. Daniil Hunter, phenomenal. Love Daniil. Unbelievable player for us for 9 seasons. He's a Pro Bowl, all pro caliber guy. But he's a guy that like he's gonna hit you. It's gonna take him a little more time to get to the quarterback sometimes, but he's so relentless, and that's how he gets a lot of his sacks. It's just that relentlessness. But Jonathan Grenard is just like just right off the ball. He had a monster game. Van Ginkel, the gangster, Van Ginky, all over the place as usual, just crushing it. No Ivan Pace, so Camus Grugier Hill, former Texan, he got in some action, had an interception on the first drive on a tip ball, had a forced fumble that Stephon Gilmore recovered. They said it wasn't a completed catch. There's some debate in the rule book about a football move. Apparently it's not actually written in the rule book, but it always gets brought up. I don't know. It's fine. But Camus Grugier Hill had a monster game. Jihad Ward had a monster game the week before. So I think right now, I've done this before, but I once again, I want to publicly apologize to the man, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, general manager, Minnesota Vikings. I owe you a public apology yet again because you have crushed it. And we got to give an extra special shout out to Flo, Brian Flores, best defensive coordinator in football right now. I don't think you can debate that, what he's doing. What he did last year with like somebody else's pieces for a different system, in many ways a complete opposite system. A lot of young guys, stripped down of some talent, had them top half of the league in most major statistical categories for the defense. And then this year, just dominant. One of the top 3 teams in EPA defensively, just stonewalling teams. Second in the league in points allowed per game, first in sacks. They're top 3 in interceptions, top 3 in turnovers forced. Just absolutely killing it. And I know B-Flow had his hands on some of the pieces they were bringing in, but you got to look. They made the business decision. We're drawing a line in the sand. Kirk, if you accept this or less, we want you back. If not, we got to let you go. They let him go. They let Daniil Hunter go. They're eating some dead cap, but then they went out and they get Jonathan Grenard. You go out and you get Van Ginkel. You go out and you get a guy like Camus Grugier Hill. You go out and you get a guy like Jihad Ward, guys that aren't expected to do much. Jerry Tillery's been playing solid ball for us on the interior. So you go out, you get some if not star level players, guys that play like stars to an extent. Jonathan Grenard had a great season last year. Van Ginkel, you go ask Dolphins fans if they wish they still had Andrew Van Ginkel. And yes, they do. But then to get the depth pieces, I feel like this team has not had great depth, especially on defense, really through the Kirk era. I think that's one of the reasons that the team suffered in the last few years under Mike Zimmer is we lost the depth, and it's a long season. It's a physical game, and guys are going to get hurt. It is what it is, and you need next man up. But when your next man up is a third stringer on other teams, you're not setting yourself up for success. So having a little extra capital, even though we had to eat the dead cap on Kirk, eat the dead cap on Daniil Hunter, had enough capital to go out, not just get a couple tier 1 free agents, the first wave free agents in Grenard and Van Ginkel, but to be able to go out and get a Jihad Ward, to get Camus Grugier Hill, to then late in camp go get a Stephon Gilmore, a veteran presence. Is it peak Stephon Gilmore? Absolutely not. But veteran presence, savvy. He's been a really good player well into his 30s, so you don't feel like he's just going to drop off a cliff necessarily like you might if a guy was 29. Like, you don't know. Is he going to be able to – is he too much of an athletic, reliant player, or is he savvy enough to get it done purely on technique? Shaq Griffin's been playing some solid ball for us this year. You go get Aaron Jones. And just the evaluation of these talents, Kwesi going out, getting the pieces, putting them together. It's beautiful because he's a GM. He comes from Wall Street, commodities trader. He's enough of a football guy. Like, he's been around the game long enough and he's passionate about the game that you don't feel like he's just some suit that has absolutely no idea what he's doing. But he knows that he's not a football guy the way that some of these other guys are football guys. So it's really about like, okay, Kevin O'Connell, Brian Flores, Matt Daniels, whoever else, the scouts. Who do you want? What do you want? What do you need? What do you like? What are the traits you're looking for? Puts his team out there, has them scout players that could fit that criteria, and he goes out and gets them, and they figure out how the chess pieces come together. Also got to shout out Rob Brzezinski, who's maybe the longest tenured person in the franchise as our capologist for decades now at this point. But just an unbelievable job, man. And Kevin O'Connell, my nitpicks with him, some play calling stuff, some scheme stuff, not leaning on the run more, not establishing the run enough, not sticking with the run enough, just some weird little play calling quirks here and there. But my biggest issue, and this goes back to the last couple of years under Zim, they were just kind of a soft team. They weren't like, even when they popped up and won 13 games a couple of years ago, they played softball. They were clutch, but they played soft. This team plays hard. This team plays tough. This team plays like they want to come out and beat the dog shit out of you. And that's why they're coming out and they're beating the dog shit out of people. They beat the dog shit out of the Giants in week 1. They beat the dog shit out of the Texans, who virtually everybody expected to be, if not just a playoff team, a contender of some capacity. Some people picking them to go to the Super Bowl, some people picking them to win the Super Bowl, and you come out and beat them 34-7, and they look like one of the worst teams in football playing that game. Maybe not one of the worst, but bottom 8 in that territory, and that they are not a bottom 8 team. The Texans are a good football team. I expect them to win a lot of games this year, but they got their shit kicked in. And then you go back to the Niners game week 2, and what happened? The score will say it was a relatively close game. But if Aaron Jones doesn't fumble on the goal line, first of all, if Fred Warner is unbelievable. To the Niners fans out there, man, to anyone that we all know that Fred Warner is a Pro Bowl, all-pro player, he's a stud. But like when you sit and watch him take over a game as a linebacker, that dude is unbelievable. Without Fred Warner, that game would have been a blowout. Aaron Jones gets in there. He doesn't fumble on the goal line. They're up 3 scores, man. So that game, it was not as close maybe as the score indicated. At no point in that game did it feel like the Vikings were not firmly in control. So, I mean, they're coming out here and just stoning these teams, man. Like I said, they just bodied the Texans, just bodied them, and you got to love it, baby. And I tried to tell them, do not want to play the Minnesota Vikings. Do not sleep on the Minnesota Vikings defense. Them boys flying around. Harrison Smith looking like peak hitman. Metellus doing his thing. Cam Beasley gets on the board with a nice diving interception this week. Ivan Pace Jr. misses the game. Doesn't matter. Guess what? We still got Blake Cashman. Guess what? We got Kamu Grugier-Hill. Jonathan Grenard getting 3 sacks this week. Pat Jones, 2 sacks last week and the week before. Van Ginkel all over the place. Like, these dudes, just unbelievable. And for about 28 hours, the Minnesota Vikings were the best team in football. And they're still one of the 2 best teams in football right now. Don't get it twisted. I'm not saying come the end of the season that they're going to be a top 2 team in the league. They could be. But you got to show it. You got to show you can sustain it. But for about 28 hours, they were the best team in football. And we can't overlook the offense, man. Aaron Jones out here over 100 yards, looking like peak Aaron Jones. Sam Darnold, 4 touchdown passes, 0 interceptions. First time in his career he's done that. Leads the league in touchdown passes. Just playing like an absolute stud. And you got to, again, go back to the Niners game. No TJ Hawkinson for the first 3 weeks. No Jordan Addison after somewhere in the third quarter in the Giants game. In the San Fran game, Justin Jefferson goes down. Sam Darnold leads a drive, kills about 7 minutes of clock with no Justin Jefferson, no Jordan Addison, no TJ Hawkinson, but he leads a methodical drive down the field, gets him into field goal range to make it a 2-possession game, and bleeds off like 7 minutes of clock with no Jets, no Addison, no Hawkinson. Still got no Addison and Hockenson. What happens when Jordan Addison comes back healthy? What happens when TJ Hockenson comes back healthy? We haven't seen this offense anywhere close to full power thus far this year. You get those dudes back healthy, all of a sudden a team that scored 34 points last week, they scored 28 points week 1, 23 points week 2, putting up numbers. The defense playing the way it's playing. This is a monster team. This is a monster team playing in a monster way. I was optimistic, way more so than the national media jabronis out there, the Seth Walders, Ben Slowick, who made a very tepid public apology this week for saying that he thought they were pretenders, and then basically doubled down on it and said, I'm a little more sold, but I'm still not sold. All right, Ben, keep watching, baby. Who else? Bill Barnwell, that clown in ESPN. All these prognosticators saying all their shit. I felt like this team should win at least 7 games, 8, 9 on the table, maybe even 10. I said if they can go 3-2 in the first 5 weeks, there's a team that could win 10 games and make the playoffs. They go 2-3, they could win 9 games, maybe sneak into the playoffs. I did not see them being 3 weeks into the season, especially at the Niners, followed by the Texans. I did not see them being anywhere close to this dominant. I felt like by the end of the year, the defense could be a top 10, maybe even top 7, 6, 5 if they really get flowing. But top 10 by the end of the year. The offense might take some time. Darnold getting used to what is always described as a very complex system for Kevin O'Connell. New pieces coming in. So it could take some time. I didn't see this. I did not see this. Like I said, 28 hours, the Minnesota Vikings were, in my eyes, unquestionably the best team in football. Until the Buffalo Bills went into Jacksonville. And everything that we did to the Texans, they did to the Jags, and then some. And I want to say something. I saw a graphic recently. It was making fun of Jalen Hurts, which we'll get into, about his turnovers. But it was like the top 3 in turnovers since whatever year it was. And, the post was making fun of Jalen Hurts. But Josh Allen was number 2 in the turnovers. And then, you see people in the comments bitching and moaning. Probably Eagles fans, salty-ass Eagles fans. Not Caesar, he's a good one. Saying, oh, yeah, but they never talk like this about Josh Allen. What about the guy next to him? What about Josh Allen? Josh Allen turns the ball over, and all y'all do is glaze Josh Allen. Well, guess what? Josh Allen puts the team on his back. Josh Allen, whether he's got a full complement of weapons and a top-tier defense or not, whether there's injuries all over the place, guess what? Josh Allen, they're going to win 11 games. They're going to win 12 games. They're going to win 13 games. They're going to go to championship games. He's proven that multiple times. You look at a Jalen Hurts, and this is not to pile on Jalen Hurts, and we are going to get to Jalen Hurts and the Eagles in a little bit, but with the Bills, with Josh Allen, it doesn't, he is a super weapon. He is a nuclear weapon, a superpower. Josh Allen, the Bills, if Josh Allen is healthy, the Bills are never going to win less than 10 games. He's that caliber of guy. He is in that highest of high tiers where you can lose a weapon. You can trade a Stephon Diggs. The Chiefs trade Tyreek Hill. Did the Chiefs miss a beat? No, they win 2 Super Bowls. Why? Because Patrick Mahomes is going to make up for deficiencies elsewhere with an obscene level of play. And to me, Josh Allen has proved that. He has not won a Super Bowl, but how many guys in the league have not won a Super Bowl? Patrick Mahomes is winning all of them. Tom Brady, he's gone. Matt Stafford got the 1. But in the last half decade, who else is winning them? Who else you putting up there? Did Joe Burrow win a Super Bowl? Did Lamar Jackson win a Super Bowl? No. So the Josh Allen haters always want to harp on, well, he hasn't won anything. Well, he's been further than virtually all these other guys with more consistency than all these other guys. The man is a super weapon. When I look at him, I think, listen, these guys could drop like flies. You can get rid of all. They get rid of Gabe Davis. They get rid of Stephon Diggs, Trent Sherfield, whoever else. You draft Keon Coleman, rookie. Don't know how long it's going to take for him to come along. Curtis Samuel comes in. Mac Hollins comes in. I like all these guys, and I like the way they fit together. I like the way they constructed that receiver room. But it's Josh Allen, man. He's going to handle business and handle business against the Jags. Did they ever? I don't even know like what to talk about. The Jags seemingly are dead. I was not super high on them this year, but it also, they were the top seed in the AFC last year when Trevor Lawrence got hurt. So you never know. You never know. They might bounce back and be fine. But I don't know. I never fully trust Doug Peterson. I respect the fact that he has a Super Bowl, but guess what? Mike McCarthy has a Super Bowl. Are we sitting here? Do we trust Mike McCarthy? No. So to me, Dougie P, I respect him. I like him as a human being. I like his personality. I don't think he's a bad football coach, but there's just quirks to his game that it's just not for me. Might be for you, but it's not for me. And obviously the Jags, their offense has just been not it through 3 games. So, we got to factor that in. Like, again, the Vikings beat the Texans, considered a top-ish contender by a lot of people. The Niners coming off a Super Bowl berth. They still got all their weapons. They were missing Christian McCaffrey, but Jordan Mason's been running like an absolute monster. And everyone else was healthy for that game. So, the Bills beating the dog shit out of the Jags, maybe not as impressive as the Vikings beating the dog shit out of the Texans, but I mean, you hang 40 plus on a team that won like a good amount of games last year. A lot of people still thinking like, they should make the playoffs or they should be in contention for the playoffs. So Bills just did what they do, man. They go in there, they handle business. Josh Allen does not fuck around. They just absolutely mollywop teams, and it's when you're rooting for the Bills, when you're a fan of the Bills, it's fun to watch for about a half, and then you're like, I'm gonna throw the Commanders game on because this thing is over. So shouts out the Bills, man. Hopefully we get the Buffalorian Tanner Moody on this week, and he and I will have a nice friendly debate. Who's better, Vikings, Bills? A little amuse-bouche for that. I think the Vikings have beaten better teams, but the Bills have beaten teams a little more handily. But right now, I like, again, right now, I feel like you got to look at those as the 2 best teams in football. Like the Chiefs are the Chiefs. Like they're going to be there in the end. The Saints looked great for 2 weeks, and then their offense looked pretty mid against the Eagles. Other teams are going to pop up. We'll get to this too, but the Jets are fine. The Packers, very impressive. We're going to get to the Packers here in a bit. But who we're going to get to right now, who does not look fine, are the Dallas Cowboys. Yikes. Caesar and I talked about this on the Pick Show last week. Who's more desperate? Who wants it more? Who needs it more? Who's coming in with that sense of urgency? That's probably who's going to get it done. And until about, 6 minutes left in the fourth, it looked like Dallas was like, oh, we got a playoff spot. Sew it up. We don't need to play hard. And it looked like Baltimore was like, if we don't win this game, they're going to execute all of us on national television and lock our families up and seize all their assets. Like they played to that level. And try to tell them again, follow the Instagram for not sports betting and not sports betting advice, where I gave some not sports betting advice to take Lamar. Actually, I did this on the Pick Show, and then I clipped it and put it on Instagram. So watch the Pick Show, subscribe on Instagram, follow on Instagram, subscribe on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I had Lamar over for carries, Lamar over rushing. Both of those hit without much stress somewhere in the third quarter. It was looking real good by halftime because it was just, you could tell Baltimore's like, listen, we can't be out here trying to be fancy. We can't be out here trying to prove anything other than we're the same dominant football team we were last year. And they came out and they looked great. They almost gave it away again. Almost another fourth quarter collapse, but they get the win. Both these teams now at 1-2. Dallas just, they don't have it, man. And you give $60 million a year to Dak. I really thought Jerry saying, I anticipate that we're going to go all in. I really thought that meant I'm not going to extend McCarthy. I'm not going to extend Dak. We're going to, I thought he should extend CD and Micah Parsons, but I thought it was like, listen, if Dak and McCarthy can't get it done this year, then we're going to let them both walk. I don't have to fire you. I don't have to cut you. Just see you bye-bye. But then he gives Dak the extension, and then Dak, I mean, I've always looked at Dak as a more athletic Kirk Cousins in the sense of like he could put up monster stats. Kirk has gotten he's gotten all the regular season monkeys off his back. Beat the Eagles on Monday night in week 2 in Philly. He's won I don't even know how many Monday night games he's won now. Like he has beat that curse. He's beat the primetime allegations. But it's still like, again, the game was on the line against the Chiefs, and we'll get to this as well. And he changes the play at the line to a run play to the outside to Bijan Robinson, who gets tackled for a loss. So it's kind of the same with Dak, where it's like you got all the pieces. You've proven you can put up the numbers. You've proven you can win in primetime. You've proven you can beat good teams on the road. You've proven that you could do all these things. You could be clutch when the team needs you, but when it comes playoff time, they just don't get it done. So if Dak don't get it done this year, man, they're going to be locked into that deal for quite some time, and they're going to win games. And I don't expect Dallas to be a 5-win team this year, or anything crazy like that. Like I, at the very least, expect them to be in it at the end of the season, fighting for a playoff spot, a wild card spot, fighting for the division, because nobody in that division is really seizing anything. I feel like the floor has risen a bit, and we'll talk about the Giants a little bit too. And and obviously Jaden Daniels and what he did on Monday night. Shouts out to the kid. I believe I was on record months ago in the off-season pods on liking Jaden Daniels in the fit with Cliff Kingsbury, and it just can the offensive line protect him? He's got 5 years of college experience, 4 years starting experience. Like the kid is poised to come in and have some immediate success. And I mean, you see it. Threw more touchdowns or scored more touchdowns than he threw incompletions, which is insane. Over 90% completion percentage. Insane. By the way, since 1940, I believe, with 8 to 30, you'd feel like a game like that. Like even you look back to um, who else? Flauge, uh, in like that first year with NIL and like navigating that from a college athlete perspective and like what that was like for those guys. But he seems like a very nice, likable guy. You hear the stories about he had the VR AI headset thing, and that's how he like grinded his mechanics. He could just get so many reps in to improve his accuracy. Um, Shouts out to him, man. Jaden Daniels looking like a stud, looking like a number 3 overall pick, looking like he might be the number 1 overall pick, or might should have been the number 1 overall pick. We will get to the actual number 1 overall pick. But Cincy 0-3, man. I mean, offensively they came to play this week. Defensively, they feels like they stayed on the bus. Maybe they stayed on the plane. Maybe they stayed home in Cincinnati. I don't know, but they did not show up for this game. Uh, Now we know Cincinnati, they do this every year. They start slow, get hot. They're there in the end. They're there. And last year Joe Burrow goes down with the injury, so that kind of derailed it. Even though Jake Browning played some good ball, former Viking, although he hates us, so fuck him. Um, but yeah, I'm not gonna write off Cincinnati yet, but for a Lou Anarumo defense, just awful performance. You expect the weapons to come around. T. Higgins looked good. Jamar had a nice touchdown. Joe Burrow's Joe Cool. Like they're gonna do their thing, but you lose Joe Mixon, man, and you can't just plug and play replace these guys. Like Joe Mixon is a really good Pro Bowl caliber running back. You see what he did in week 1 with the Texans. You don't think Cincinnati would like to have that on their team? And if the defense can't figure it out, man, they might be in some trouble. 0-3, your odds to make the playoffs, not great. Not great. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I can confirm for sure that they are not great. And 0-4, I mean, let's take a look and let's see who they play next week. See if 0-4 is a real possibility. They play at Carolina, so on paper should be a win. But the Carolina Panthers are 1-2. Cincinnati Bengals 0-3. So let's talk about the Panthers. I had them slated a little bit later, but I said this on the pick show. Now I did not go on the record. I said I'm tempted to take the Panthers. I think they could win this game, but I can't in good conscience pick the Panthers with as awful as they've been. I want to see how they play with Andy Dalton coming in, possibly being a stabilizing presence. The connection with him and Adam Thielen, two savvy veterans. That's a cliche, but two guys that they can figure out their connection, and it could be a stabilizing force for the team. Now the defense is gonna have to figure it out because another situation of getting absolutely bodied. But the Panthers came to play, man. I did not see much, if any, of that game, but clearly something was working right. And Andy Dalton, I mean, he'll do this, man. Like people forget Andy Dalton was a Pro Bowl quarterback. Andy Dalton led the Bengals to the playoffs, the first 6 years of his career, or something crazy like that. Like the dude could play football. Like he people start to look at him like, oh, he's like Ryan Fitzpatrick. And no disrespect to Ryan Fitzpatrick, who has his place in NFL lore forever. Andy Dalton, again, was a Pro Bowl quarterback who led a team to the playoffs for a half decade straight. Like he's nothing to scoff at. And it's not like, he's not a running back where you got to sit and think like, he hit 30, he's going to fall off a cliff. Like there's no reason to think Andy Dalton just fell off a cliff. So shouts out Andy Dalton, man. Shouts out the Panthers getting that win. You got to feel bad for Bryce Young because now everyone's really going to pile on and be like, oh, so it really was just the fact that Bryce Young can't play football. And I'm sure Bryce Young can play football, but just having that stabilizing presence, especially with a rookie head coach in Canales, who is on top of that a young guy who had 1 year of experience calling plays with the Bucs. So, him trying to get it done with a young quarterback whose confidence might not be that high because he had a terrible rookie season, and you're changing the scheme and the system, and you changed it mid-season last year because you fired the coach, and it's a lot. Like Andy Dalton, having him in there, I think is a really good thing for Canales to be able to just get his system in place with someone that is ready to just run it efficiently right now. You get the pieces in place, you get everything where the wheels are moving, and it's easier then. And this is why, teams should sit rookie quarterbacks way more often than they do. I'm not saying they should only ever sit them, but I think the overwhelming majority of rookie quarterbacks should not be playing right away. And you build the car, you test drive the car, and then you put the driver in the car. You don't put the driver in the car before the car has an engine. It doesn't make any sense. So again, shouts out Andy Dalton. I think he's what Canales and the Panthers need right now, and hope for the best for Bryce Young. Hope that his time comes. He can learn from this, and that it doesn't need to become a reclamation project the way Geno or Sam Darnold right now or Baker Mayfield. Even though I don't think Baker was truly a reclamation project, he led the Browns to a playoff win over the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, come on. And then he went to the Panthers, who were a dumpster fire. So I can't just sit here and put that on Baker. But either way, that's the new hot trend, reclamation projects. But hopefully it doesn't come to that for Bryce Young, for his sake, for the Panthers fans' sake. Hopefully, Canales can just get his system rolling, and there'll come a time when it's like, okay, we feel comfortable putting Bryce back in here. Bryce can kind of hit the reset button and get another shot. So shouts out to him, man. Them bouncing back. And speaking of bouncing back, I wrote this man off as dead, deceased, buried, and long forgotten. Dan Jones, Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones. It turns out that as awful as he was week one, and I tried to pump the brakes and say, the Vikings look real good, and I'm optimistic about how they handled the Giants' defensive front, that could translate to future games against better teams. But then beating the shit out of the Giants, making Daniel Jones look like an absolute buffoon. Nice revenge for the playoff game in 2022, but I didn't want to go too hard on the Vikings, the best team in football, after beating the Giants 28-6 in week one. But Daniel Jones has looked pretty solid the last couple of weeks. And last week it was against Washington, and he always, for whatever reason, does well against Washington. But he did good this week in a win. He looked solid. There's a graphic floating around where it's Jalen Hurts and Daniel Jones numbers, and Daniel Jones only has 2 turnovers and like 3 times as many touchdowns, and it's like, oh, okay, like maybe Daniel Jones is not as bad as we thought. Maybe he was terrible and he looked really good in 2 games against the Vikings in 2022, got the big contract, but sucked against everybody else. And then he gets his shit kicked in by the Vikings. Maybe it flipped the juju, where now Daniel Jones is a world beater against every team but the Minnesota Vikings, which I'll take because I don't care what he does to anybody else. As long as we win, I'm good. I'm Gucci. So, I mean, that's another shout out, man. Shout out Dan Jones bouncing back. He's getting booed by his own fans. Fans waiting for him to leave the stadium. Think about it. Game ends. A game where you got smoked the whole game, and you would imagine the fans are going to bail. They could have bailed at halftime in that Vikings game, certainly by the fourth quarter. They stuck around for the whole game. They stuck around for the players to shower, to get changed, to address the media, socialize, maybe eat a little snack, do whatever they do after the game. They waited that long to wait for Daniel Jones to walk out of the stadium so they could heckle his ass. To go from that to then having a really nice game against Washington and then coming out this week and getting a big win, get your first win of the season, kind of, again, like the Carolina Panthers, just stop the bleeding, make everyone pump the brakes. They're going to look at other teams around the league that didn't do good this week. And at least for 1 week, you're not a punching bag. You don't have that just added noise on the outside that you got to spend energy blocking out. You can we got a good win. Let's build on it. And there's no noise around us. Let's just use all our energy, evaluate the win, assess what we can do better, get better, move on to the next one, see if we can start stacking and surprising people. So shouts out Daniel Jones, man. Brian Daboll, great play caller. Malik Neighbors looks fantastic. So that's going to help. But shouts out to them, man. And, let's stay in New Jersey. I love New Jersey. I just talked to my parents on the phone a couple hours ago. They're headed back home to New Jersey tomorrow. So we'll stay in New Jersey. The New York Jets of New Jersey. The Jets, as I said, the Jets are fine. The Jets are fine. It's going to be a process. You play San Francisco. San Francisco's a juggernaut. They went to the Super Bowl last year. Aaron Rodgers' first game back off the Achilles. He's testing it in game action for the first time. A little bit rusty from not being in the game for a year. And, the defense, you're dealing with a high-powered offense with a ton of weapons. But the Jets defense looks like the Jets defense that we all expected. Robert Saleh, say what you will about him as a head coach, and I will, and I think that he's a buffoon as a head coach, but he knows how to coach defense. And Aaron Rodgers is just gradually getting back to it, The connection with Garrett Wilson, who's an absolute stud, major piece on a couple years ago. I came out of fantasy football retirement after 8 years on the shelf, did one league, won the championship, retired. Thank you very much. And a big reason was Garrett Wilson, who is an absolute stud. So Aaron Rodgers, he's got the Lazard connection. Lazard, winding the clock back a little bit, making a ton of plays right now. And Garrett Wilson, absolute stud. If they get Mike Williams involved, figure that out. Plus, get Breece Hall back running the way we know he can run. I think the Jets are just going to gradually just keep getting better. And I think the Jets are a playoff team because I trust Aaron Rodgers. I don't trust the coaching staff. I don't think they're going to win a championship. But I trust A-Rod. I trust that defense. I love their weapons. I love Breece Hall. I've made a ton of money not sports betting on Breece Hall. And there's no good reason that they shouldn't win a bunch of games. So the Jets, as I continue to say, the Jets are fine. That's my biggest point from that game. The Patriots, maybe who we thought they were, which is absolute garbage. And their offensive line was brutal. I don't need to harp on it. The memes are out there. Go look up the meme accounts on Instagram. And while you're on Instagram, follow us at Football Heads Show. That's 2 S's, Football Heads Show on Instagram. And check out the memes. The Jets are fine, but the Eagles might be in trouble. And I hate to do this. I mean, I really don't, but I hate to do this because I love to talk shit about the Eagles. And when I got to talk shit about the Eagles because it's actually warranted, because they actually are kind of in trouble, I feel bad because I can't I got to analyze it instead of just being an emotional Eagles hater. And I'd rather be an emotional Eagles hater and just be a hater than to actually have to analyze that they might be in trouble. AJ Brown's been injured. Smitty goes down with the dirty hit that homeboy should be fined for. I mean, not that I'm, don't fine him. Don't fine anybody. Let these people keep their money. But, I don't know. He should have been flagged. And so now Smitty's out with the concussion. Dallas Goedert had a hell of a game. A couple huge plays to help them win that game. Saquon obviously bouncing back from the drop in week 2. Had another monster game. Huge play that they wouldn't have won without. So you're going to have to lean on those guys, and that's fine. But Sirianni and Hurts, dude. I've been on the record that I like Sirianni because I like that he, early in his first year as a coach, recognized that he was having trouble managing the game and also calling the plays, and he gave up the play calling. He said, you know what, this isn't working. Someone else take over. And it worked. And they made the playoffs, and then they go to the Super Bowl next year. So I respect, because there's too much in the league when it comes to coaching. There's too much, they might have fucked this up over there, but I'm gonna show, why this guy will work in our system. We're gonna coach him up. They might have fucked up over there, but we're gonna coach him up. Or, yeah, this didn't work last week, but we're just gonna keep doing it because I know my system works. So any coach that has the humility to say, you know what, this isn't working, let's change something. I don't need to look like a genius. I just need to win football games. So for as much as a clown as Sirianni can come across, and for the fact that he coaches the team that I hate probably the most, I've taken a liking to him because I respect that mentality. Whereas I've been very critical of Jalen Hurts, who I think is a good quarterback, but once you get paid the amount of money he's getting paid, he's in the Trevor Lawrence boat, he's in the Tua boat, he's in that category of quarterbacks where it's like, okay, you've done enough to get paid, but the way the market is, they're paying you way too much, and that's not your fault. That's the market. It is what it is, and you got to get what you can get. But with great money comes great responsibility. And can you elevate your game? Can you, as I was talking about with Josh Allen and the Bills, can you elevate your game to where you're getting paid so much that you're not going to be able to pay some of these other pieces? So can you elevate the team around you and with your superpower play fill in the gaps? And thus far, I don't think Jalen Hurts has done that. He's a fine quarterback. He's a good talent. He's a starting caliber quarterback. But is he a $50-55 million a year quarterback? I don't think so. And then you lose Jason Kelsey. The tush push is not, it's at the very least, it loses the mystique that comes along with Kelsey. And, Juergens may end up being just as good at it, but until he proves that, teams aren't as deathly afraid of it as they were. So he's turning the ball over. And I don't know, he just has some plays that it's just like, oh my God. But I know that the Eagles fans and the national media and most other people that aren't me are more on the Sirianni's a clown. Like, get this guy out of here and hire Bill Belichick. Which, side note, the offseason arms race between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys to hire Bill Belichick is going to be insane. But to me, with Sirianni and Hurts, it's a chicken and egg situation. Because you look at it and say, like, but Jalen Hurts is playing. Like, he's the one that's not getting it done on the field, not getting it done enough to win games the way they need to be winning games, to not be able to fill in the gaps of not having A.J. Brown, not having Smitty out there. So, but then you look at it and say, well, is Sirianni not putting Hurts in the best position to succeed? Is he not developing enough? Is it Sirianni's fault that Jalen Hurts hasn't gotten to the next level, to the next step? That he hasn't leveled up past the level that he was at when they got to that Super Bowl and got paid? And then you say, okay, well, now he's got to level up yet again. How much of that's on Sirianni? How much of that's on Hurts? I have no idea. I'm not even going to sit here and pretend that I have any clue. But if the Eagles aren't in trouble, I mean, they're 2-1. They're sitting on top of their division, so you can't shit on them too much. But again, no A.J. Brown, no Devontae Smith. Hurts not playing anywhere near his best ball. Sirianni's under the gun. How are they going to respond to this? Is it going to divide them even further, or are they going to come together and say, all right, we got to figure this out. We're both under the gun. We are both under fire right now. We need to get together and figure out how to plow through this thing and get better and get back to where we were. And they need to get healthy at receiver because you need your guys. Like Dallas Goedert and Saquon are fantastic players, but they can only do so much. So that's the thing to watch, man. It's sad, and this is what could derail the Eagles more than the injuries or just the play on the field. Is like when you have this narrative building, especially the way things ended last year, and like the weird stories coming out, they weren't on the same page. If that continues, and now the heat's on even more, the hot seat's even hotter. Like that can create some friction if they can't get on the same page, and it's like one of us is going to get fired, and we know it's going to be Sirianni. They're always going to stick with the quarterback, and it's way too hard to get out of the contract without just destroying your cap. Coaches don't count against the cap, so like you could just fire them and pay them, and it is what it is. But if there's any real tension there and that narrative continues, and God forbid they lose a couple games in a row or something, like the vibes could be not high in Philly, which I would love because fuck the Eagles. But for all you Eagles fans out there, don't harp on me. That's just my own personal opinion. For your sake, you need A.J. Brown back. You need Devontae Smith back. At least then you got your weapons. And you got your weapons. You could just figure it out, take it game by game, and whatever needs to happen behind the scenes between Sirianni and Hurts to heal or mend or fuse that relationship and get back to where because when they were clicking, they went to the Super Bowl. When they were on the same page, they went to the Super Bowl. So I don't know. The Eagles 2-1, but it feels worse to me. And maybe that's just because I hate the Eagles, but it feels worse to me. Um, what doesn't feel worse is the Green Bay Packers. It feels worse to me because I also hate the Packers. But the reality of the situation is, and I said this on the pick show, I believe, last week, that we got to give LaFleur his flowers. LaFleur is a guy I've been critical of. I've made fun of him constantly. He rode Aaron Rodgers' coattails. Everyone wants to call him a genius, but Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. He's doing what he's doing. But he righted the ship last year. They make the push. Jordan Love, the growth in the back half of the season, how good he looked, how dominant they looked in Dallas, how competitive they looked in San Francisco. So I think you had to give LaFleur his due there. He was proving himself last year. But then for this year to be doing what he's doing with Malik Willis and to do it again, now granted, they're not playing the toughest competition. You're playing Indianapolis, you're playing the Titans and Bill Levis, who just, I'm done. I've died on the hill. I've died on the hill. I died on the hill in week 3 with the Tennessee Titans, and fuck them. Will Levis, I'm sorry, but either turn it around or go fuck yourself. It's that simple. So Titans fans out there, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you got to deal with this dog shit and that they're wasting a generational talent in the planet-sized mutant, my boy, T'Vondre Sweat. But we're here to talk about the Titans. Not this week. We're here to talk about the Packers. Again, 2 not good teams thus far in the Colts and the Titans. But you can only play the games on the schedule. You're doing it with Malik Willis. He's got to have his scheme dialed in. He's got to be sharp and on point. You don't have a Pro Bowl guy that can bail you out. You don't have a guy that can. We talk about filling in gaps with Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. Maybe you have some play calling gaps. Maybe it's just for a quarter of one game you're just not on the ball, but you got a guy that can fill in those gaps. You don't have that. Malik Willis looked dead in the water, like he was going to wash out of the league. And LaFleur is like, bring him in here. He's going to go 12 for 14, and he's going to run for a bunch of yards, and he's going to throw a bunch of touchdowns and make a bunch of big plays, and we're going to be fine. And we're just going to play insane defense and be super efficient on offense and run the ball all over the place. And, shouts out LaFleur, man. I got to give him his due. I can't sit here and talk shit. And you got to shout out the Packers, man. Huge tilt this weekend. Vikings at Packers. There's a lot of scuttlebutt around the Packers. Jordan Love, he was almost ready to play last week, but we're going to hold him out one more week, and he'll be back next week. I don't know if I buy it. I don't know if the MCL, if missing 2 games, I don't. And again, I'm biased because I'm a Vikings fan and I hate the Packers, but I respect them. Do you want to put a compromised Jordan Love out there against the Brian Flores 44 Hellfire defense? I don't know that you do. And you're doing your thing with Malik Willis, it's working. Whatever you're going to say, you're 2-1. You can't be any worse than 500 if you lose this game against the Vikings. It hurts in the division, and they're 4-0, and you're 2-2, and you're down 1 game in the head-to-head. But I think if you told Packers fans after week 1, after the injury, that they would win 2 out of 3 games with Malik Willis as a starter, I think they would take that. I think they'd be pretty excited about that. So I think you got to weigh that out because, the Vikings lead the league in sacks. First team or one of 3 teams in the history of the modern history of the NFL, whatever the fuck that means. One of 3 teams with 5 or more sacks in each of their first 3 games, which is a baseball stat. I'm not sitting here beating my chest over that. But the point is they're getting heat on the quarterback. They don't need to blitz not even half as much as they did last year, and they're still getting heat on the quarterback constantly. They're getting more sacks than anybody. They're getting pressure, and they're getting it fast. If Jordan Love is still compromised, do you want Jordan Love at 80% getting just the snot beat out of him by these big boys, the bad boys on the Minnesota Vikings defense? I don't know. So I don't know if I buy that Love is going to be back, but as a fan of the Vikings who expects the worst, I'm kind of expecting him to play. But either way, it's going to be a good game. It's a divisional game. It's in Green Bay, but it's not in December, which means that we're not going to probably not get beat by 45 points like we usually do when we play in Green Bay in December. So thank you to the schedule gods for booking this in September. But I mean, these are two of the best teams in the NFC. Like the Niners are 1-2. I expect them to be better than 1-2. I did kind of smell a funky season from them, but they're not a bad team. Dallas is down. The Eagles are down. You got some other young teams on the rise. What's Washington going to be? Have the Giants with Daniel Jones figured something out? What's happening in the South? The Bucks 2-0, but then they take a beat down from the Broncos, which I predicted on the pick show. Thank you very much. I look like a genius. Not really, but I'll take it. The Falcons, they were in it. They almost beat the Chiefs. They beat the Eagles, they beat the Eagles Monday night. So I don't think we fully know what the Falcons are going to be, but it's Kirk Cousins, so that means they're going to win 7, 8, 9, or 10 games. The Panthers, despite the really nice bounce back, and once again, shouts out to the Red Rifle, Andy Dalton, probably not going to be in contention. The Saints looked like world beaters week 1 and week 2, and then the offense looked terrible against the Eagles. Defense looked really good, though. So, and you look at the EPA chart, and top 5 defensive EPA, top 3 offensive EPA. So the Saints, I'm still wait and see on the September Saints. So, but we could put them in the conversation. But the Saints, the Niners down a little bit, Dallas down big, Eagles down a little bit, despite the 2-1 record. Detroit, Minnesota, and Green Bay, you could make a very real case that those are the 3 best teams in the NFC right now. And I would argue that the Vikings, who I said were the best team in football for 28 hours until the Bills beat the shit out of the Jags, Vikings best team in the conference. Packers may be the second best team. And then when they get Jordan Love back, who knows? They may end up being the best team in the conference. I have no idea, but you got to look at what they're doing with Malik Willis, look at what they're doing on defense with the run game. And I mean, the Packers, they look scary, man. So that's going to be, it's going to be a probably very nerve-wracking game for me to watch, unless somehow we beat the shit out of the Packers too, which would be awesome. But the gut says this is going to be a tight one. It's going to be a close one, and should be a hell of a game. So if your team's not playing at the same time as the Packers and the Vikings, which should be 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. Pacific, I would check that game out. You got YouTube TV, you got Sunday Ticket, throw the Packers Vikings on. Should be a good one. Now, a team that's quietly pumping out good ones, and I feel like they're flying way under the radar, and this is good for them. I think anytime you can fly under the radar, I think it's good. I like that some people, like Ryan Clark, is super high on the Vikings right now. Orlovsky's been slurping Darnold and O'Connell and the Vikings since preseason, so shouts out to him being ahead of the curve on that. But, the Saints for the first 2 weeks were getting a ton of buzz. The Bills finally getting some due. But the Seattle Seahawks, 3-0, not a tough schedule. So you got to give them that qualifier. But the Seahawks are flying way under the radar, but they're just handling business. Just handling business. And that's all you can do. Play the games on the schedule, beat up on bad teams, beat up on teams that are injured and missing their top players. And again, this is a game I did not watch much of because I did bet on it. I had a 4-leg parlay that the Niners screwed up at the end. It would have been just a little sprinkle, turned $5 into $40. Would have hit if the Niners held on, but didn't watch much of it because I'm like, the Dolphins are dead. I thought they were going to be bad coming into the year. They looked bad. They got the shit kicked out of them by the Bills. Tua goes down. Skylar Thompson goes down. my buddy Adam Dobrovolsky, is going to be on the show soon. He texted me and he said, we got a Tim Boyle sighting from Miami. And it's just like, oh God. If you're trotting Tim Boyle out there, listen, I have a better career college touchdown to interception ratio than Tim Boyle does. And so do you, sitting at home watching this. Tim Boyle should not be in the league. No offense to him. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but if you're not that good in college, how the hell are you in the pros? And if you're absolute dog shit in the pros and a team has to fucking trot you out there, not start you, God forbid if Tim Boyle starts a game next week. Oh my God. Dolphins just sim to the offseason. Just sim to the offseason. They're dead. But Seahawks, opposite of dead, very alive, not being talked about that much. So this is a note for me to keep an eye on Seattle. I don't know how to gauge them just yet because they've had a softer schedule for sure. But again, they're handling business. They're doing what they need to do. They're not locked up. I guess the Patriots game, it was a tight one, went to OT, so you could look at that. But I want to see how this Seattle team develops over time. Is this for real? Are they just going to kind of fly under the radar and just keep doing what they're doing? Are they going to beat the doors off a good team? Maybe when they play San Francisco the first time, they beat them by touchdown, 10 points, 14 points, something like that. And then everyone starts talking about Seattle. But very much flying under the radar for a team that has been playing some damn good ball. They're 3-0. You cannot argue with 3-0. And if you can't argue with 3-0 and you can't argue with the Pittsburgh Steelers, I don't know what to make of the Steelers because they're not putting up a ton of points. But they got a good offensive EPA. They're very efficient. I think Fields with Arthur Smith and his offense is a strong fit. And in fact, when there was a lot of buzz about Justin Fields going to Atlanta, I guess back home, before Arthur Smith got fired, it's like, ooh, that's intriguing. That could work. That could fit really well. And Fields just, nothing super sexy. He's not, he's no Sam Darnold, but he's efficient. He's getting it done. He looks like a good professional quarterback, and the defense is just balling, man. Top in the league in points per game allowed. You can't argue with that. Much the same with the Vikings. They're just playing dominating defense right now, and you can ride that a long way. And if Fields just stays clean, stays efficient, Arthur Smith draws it up right, you run the ball, you I don't want to say play it safe. Just be efficient. Just manage the game. Don't torpedo the game. Let the defense do what they do. And I want to. They're another team like the Seahawks. I don't know what they are just yet because I haven't watched them closely enough. But I'm very curious at how this Steelers team is going to play out. Now, to get back into some more not sports betting, I may or may not have a few jelly beans on the Steelers to have over 8.5 wins because Mike T is Mike T and he ain't winning less than 9 games in a 17-game season. Just ain't going to happen. So for my sake, I hope they keep it up and win me a little scratch. But I'm curious. I'd love to hear from some Steelers fans. Who are the Steelers to you? What do you see from the Steelers from the inside that people like me on the outside that haven't watched a ton of Steelers this year and just sort of like seeing the highlights, seeing some plays here and there, seeing the stats, seeing the record? What am I missing? How do you feel like this is a house of cards that's going to fall down? Do you feel like the offense is a house of cards that's going to fall down and the defense is going to have to drag them through the middle of the season? Or do you feel like the whole thing might fall apart? Or are you looking at this saying like, listen, this defense is for real. This is a championship caliber defense. Fields looks comfortable. The offense is moving. They're efficient. They're exactly what they need to be with this defense to win a bunch of games, get yourself some home playoff games, and see what happens. See what happens. Maybe it's time. It's time for another Cinderella run to the Super Bowl. It's been a while. Eli Manning had his couple. You had the Joe Flacco, but it's been a long while since we've seen one of those miraculous sort of Cinderella runs to the Super Bowl. So Steelers fans, hit me up. Let me know who do you think this team is. I don't know just yet, but I'm very intrigued by them. And again, you look at the EPA offense and defense, and you got to give them their due. If you got the top scoring defense in the league, you're going to win some games. Just it's that simple. And again, Fields, I liked Fields coming out. I hate Ohio State, but I liked Fields. I was rooting for him not to be like super good in Chicago because I'm a Vikings fan, but I like the kid and I wanted to see him do well. So now that he's not in my division, I really want to see him do well. And I don't know, he looks good, and Bears fans might be saying, shit, should we have kept Justin Fields? Like, should we have just fired the coaching staff and brought in an offensive guy to actually like do something with Justin Fields as opposed to drafting Caleb Williams? I mean, you kind of had to take him, so I'm not actually asking that question. But Caleb Williams, man, it's been a rough go. It has been a rough go for Caleb Williams. He looked better. He looked better this week. He got 2 touchdowns. They threw the ball 52 times, which is like, I don't care who the rookie quarterback is. You could throw the term generational quarterback around all the hell you want. If you got a rookie quarterback, you got to give him a run game, man. We can't be putting fucking rookie quarterbacks out here throwing the ball 52 times. I don't care if it's Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning. I don't care who it is. I don't care who the prospect is. We can't be throwing the ball 52 times in week 3 of a guy's rookie season. Give him a running game. Give him a running attack. Pay for somebody. You're not paying a quarterback. You're telling me you can go out and acquire Keenan Allen. You can go out and draft Rome Odunze. And you can't go get Derrick Henry? Or you can't go try and get Saquon Barkley? Like, come on. You're not doing the most that you can to help Caleb Williams. But he looked better. But he's still, again, I keep going back to this. He's not comfortable operating within the pocket. He's not comfortable operating on schedule. He's much more comfortable operating off schedule, and a lot of the off schedule stuff is not working the way they want it to work right now. Because again, you got to work through it and decide, like, okay, I could do ABC, XYZ in college. And let me tell you, when he does ABC, XYZ, even if it's a disaster play, it looks cool. Like, his ability to roll out to the left, jump in like 180 and like throw across his body while he's sideways, and it's just like a rope. It's nuts. It's nuts, some of the stuff he does. Even when it's picked off, you watch and you're like, whoa, I didn't know anyone could do that. So he's going to figure that out and figure out, like, okay, I could do A, B, C, X, Y, Z, but in the pros, I can only do A, C, X, and Z. Like, he'll figure that out. But if he never gets comfortable operating on schedule from within the pocket, he's never going to be a championship quarterback. He might make Pro Bowls, he might make the playoffs, but he's never going to win a championship until he figures that out. And I got a lot of respect for Shane Waldron, but I don't know that staff, as currently constructed, is the right staff to teach Caleb Williams what he needs to learn. And part of it too is on him. I don't know Caleb Williams from Joe Blow on the street, so I can't say that he's one way or the other. But at the end of the day, it's up to him. It's up to him to say, like, okay, it's not enough for me to just be able to do freak shit that nobody else can do. Like, I need to be able to do freak shit nobody else can do, but also do the shit everybody else can do, and just gradually work until I can do that better than everyone. And then on top of it, like, Patrick Mahomes can do what everybody else can do better than anyone else can do it, and he can also do freak Patrick Mahomes shit. And that's what Caleb Williams needs to get to, whether he's in his own way or not, whether the coaching staff is in his way or not. We're not there yet, but it's only 3 games. So, again, he's got weapons. You got a potentially championship caliber defense. So I do expect the Bears to get better as this process goes along, but it's not looking great right now. It's not looking great. I'm not going to write them off. I'm not going to call them a bust. I'm not going to say that the Bears are dead in the water, but it's going to take some time. We just got to monitor. Again, this week looked better than previous weeks. So for Caleb Williams' sake, for the Bears fans' sake, he builds off of it. For my sake, for Vikings fans' sake, everywhere, and Packers fans and Lions fans, and hopefully none of that happens and he's absolute trash. And he made a bunch of money, so it's not like he can't take care of his family if he ends up trash. So it is what it is. But Caleb, do your thing, man. You'll figure it out. And if you don't, well, that's good for me. So it is what it is. Few little points left here. We're at 70 minutes into this show. Good Lord. If you made it this far, thank you very much. Like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Follow on Instagram at Football Head Show with 2 S's. That's Football Heads Show. The Chiefs, my buddy Adam said this to me last night, the night before. Maybe the most fraudulent 3-0 start that he's ever seen. I'm not necessarily going to go that far, but like the Ravens game comes down to the last play. You get the wonky call there at the end of the second game against Cincinnati, and then everything's floating out with how is it pass interference the week before, but it's not pass interference this week when Kansas City does it. I will say when I watched it live, I didn't think it was pass interference. It didn't even cross my mind. It felt like it was a bang play. If you take a screenshot and meme it and put it online, or you show it in slow-mo, or you show it and go frame by frame, like, yeah, it's pass interference. But in live speed, it came across as a very bang play. And in those situations, like, I don't have a problem with them not calling that. I just, you wish they'd be consistent when it comes with the Chiefs. I think that's more of that. Like, I don't have an issue with any of the calls in these first 3 Chiefs games, but it's just a case of like, come on, man. Like, you're supposed to be the best team in the league. You won 3 out of the last 5 Super Bowls, 2 in a row. Like, can you just go out here and beat the shit out of a team like the Bills or the Vikings? And so we don't have to sit here every single week and make jokes about the refs and all that shit. I saw a great meme of a guy. He's like, "Oh, my new Chiefs jersey arrived," and he opens the box and he pulls out, it's a referee shirt. Like, whatever. I don't want to talk about the Chiefs. They're 3-0. They're going to be there in the end. They're a good team. They're a great team. They're coached by one of the greatest Mount Rushmore coaches of all time, Patrick Mahomes. Best player in football. I'm not going to shit on him, but I don't want to sit here and talk about the fucking refs and the Chiefs and all that shit. Like, Chiefs, Kansas City, please. Just, Patrick, I know you're a big fan of the program. Just beat someone by 3 touchdowns next week so we don't have to talk about the refs. Please. Please. Oh, couple games left. I talked about the Niners 15 times during this show. Very disappointing upset, very disappointing collapse when I had money on the line. Very surprising when you consider all the injuries that the Rams have, but I don't know. I expect they'll work through it. I'd love to sit here and give you hot takes about all this stuff, but it's week 3. We're going on to week 4. Like, I'm not going to sit here and write the book on any of these guys, but Shanahan, when he goes up against little big bro Sean McVay. So I don't know. I don't know what his deal is. He just kind of he's Shanahan, man. He's got his little quirks where in these certain situations he just cannot get it done. Plus, they're down Christian McCaffrey. They were down Debo. Brandon Ayuk is on a milk carton right now. So I don't know, but I expect the Niners to be okay. I'm still higher on the Niners than I am the Rams, even though the Rams pulled it out. Tutu Atwell making some plays, so shouts out Tutu Atwell. But Niners, they'll be back in the mix. And then the last thing we got here is the Detroit Football Lions and the Arizona Cardinals. I don't know. The Cardinals, this is to be expected. I think they're going to be better than most teams thought they were going to be. But you're going to have games like this. The Lions, a very legitimate team, went to the NFC Championship game last year. Like the Cards, I didn't think they were going 12, 13 games. So you're going to have games where you just get beat by a better team. I think it's the mid teams that the Cardinals are going to find ways to win those games. But the Detroit Lions, we'll end it with the Lions. I still feel like something's wonky with the offense. I don't know what it is. Lions fans, we're rivals, so feel free to take a shit all over me for saying it. But I genuinely do want to know, like the people that are watching every snap, every play of every Lions game, is this a weird take? Am I off base for saying that something feels off with the offense? Maybe I'm just looking at the counting stats too much and I'm not really in the game flow watching every play of the games. So I could be way off base here, but just something feels off with the offense. But the defense is balling. Defense is balling. 2 years ago, they were the worst defense in football, and now they look like one of the best. We've seen we saw what the Cardinals did with the Rams last week, saw what they did to the Bills. The Bills, one of the top 6 or 7 teams in defensive EPA, and we saw what the Bills did to Jacksonville. I don't know. I feel like Detroit, their defense doing that to the Cardinals after the Cardinals have been a pretty damn solid offense at the very least. I would say the first 2 weeks, way more than solid. You hold them to 10 points. Kyler Murray looks atrocious. I'm going to give that credit to the Detroit Lions. Dan Campbell, he's got that culture, man. They're going to play tough. They're going to find ways to win. I said this last week. Even if the offense kind of muddles its way for a month or two and has to figure some things out, if that is the case, they're still going to win a bunch of games because the culture's right. The mentality's right. They're a tough physical football team, and now everyone knows who the Lions are, so they're going to get everybody's best shots. You're probably going to lose a couple of those games that you might have won the previous year because everybody's getting up for you. They're going to win a bunch of games. We'll see. But as I said, Detroit, Green Bay, Minnesota could be top 3 teams in the conference, all in the same division. So NFC North going to be an absolute dogfight all year. But Lions fans, let me know. Something feels off on the offense to me. I don't think it's a concern. It's just something, like I said last week, to keep an eye on, and I kept an eye on it this week, and it felt kind of the same to me. But again, I didn't watch every play, didn't watch every snap, so I could be totally fucking off here. So tell me what I'm missing. Tell me what you think. But that's it. That's all the games. That's all the slates. That's all the teams on this Let Me Talk to You Tuesday, which yet again will be released on a Wednesday. But yeah, I think we got to end it with a little promo, the pick show, noob football picks with the Puerto Rican Prince of the Pigskin. Cesar Rodriguez will be coming out later this week. We're going to try and get this special edition on the books. Me versus the Buffalorian, debating who's the best team in football, the Minnesota Vikings or the Buffalo Bills, moderated by Adam Dobrovolsky. Hopefully we will be able to make that happen. I cannot promise it. Schedules are schedules, but we're going to do everything we can to make that happen. But I'll leave you with this, at the very least, for about 28 hours. My Minnesota Vikings, the best team in football. Nobody wants to play the Vikings because they got some bad boys on that defense. But until next time, take it easy, football heads. Move it, football heads!